All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a pretty massive concept today.
Yeah, huge topic.
Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Grace.
Absolutely.
And, we hear this word grace all the time
Mm-hmm.
in so many different contexts. But particularly
Yeah.
for this deep dive, we're going to be looking at it through the lens of the Bible.
Yeah.
And I know you've mentioned before how this is something you've been curious about.
For sure.
So
yeah.
we're really trying to unpack it.
I think what's interesting about this is that it's one of those words you hear and you
Okay.
think you know it.
Yeah.
But when you actually start to look at it
Yeah.
and all of the different facets of what grace is, it can be surprising.
It's one of those words, too, that I think gets thrown around a lot.
Yes.
But I'm not sure people really understand the weight of it.
Absolutely.
So let's just jump right in.
Okay.
I think one of the first places we see grace is in the concept of salvation.
Yes.
This is something that both Ephesians 2.89 and Titus 3.47 talk about. And they specifically talk about the fact that salvation is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something we earn.
Yeah, and that is a radical concept when you really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So many of our systems, and particularly belief systems, are about earning.
Totally.
You work hard, you get the reward,
Yeah.
you do good, you're worthy.
It's like a meritocracy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But this flips that on its head
Totally does.
completely
Yeah.
and says no. It is not because of anything
Mm-hmm.
that you do that you are loved,
Yeah.
you are accepted. It's because of who God is.
Yeah, and that really goes against our human nature.
It does.
To earn something.
It does.
To work towards something.
Absolutely. And that's why it can be so hard for us to grasp.
Yes.
Because it's a paradigm shift.
It makes me think of like when you're a little kid and you're told to do your chores.
Yes.
And you're told if you do your chores, you'll get an allowance.
Yes.
But this is saying that you're just given the allowance, whether you do your chores or not.
It's not a transaction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so much of how we approach religion or even just life is transactional.
Yes. It's a give and take.
Yeah.
It's you do this for me, I'll do this for you.
Yes.
It's like currency.
Yes. Yeah. And this is saying nope.
Mm-hmm.
It's freely given.
It's interesting because, a lot of people will say, I don't need religion.
You're right.
I'm a good person.
Yes.
I do good things.
Exactly.
But if you believe in this idea of grace,
Yes.
it's saying that even if you're a good person,
Yeah.
your salvation
Doesn't matter.
comes from this other place.
Yes.
It's this unearned thing.
It's the grace of God.
And I think that is one of the biggest things that
It's huge.
really trips people up.
Yeah. And it's a stumbling block for a lot of folks.
Yes.
Because we want to earn it.
Yes.
We want to be in control.
Yeah.
And grace takes that control away.
Absolutely. And I think that brings up an interesting point.
Yeah.
Because if it's not about earning it, if it's not about
Right.
always doing the right thing,
Yeah.
then how do we approach those times
Mm-hmm.
when we fail
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
or when we fall short
Yes.
or when we make mistakes?
This is where grace as empowerment
Yes.
really comes into play.
Okay.
So it's not just about
Mm-hmm.
getting to heaven
Right.
one day.
Yeah.
It's about living life now.
Yeah. Navigating all the ups and downs.
Absolutely. And this is where I think 2 Corinthians 12.9
Yeah.
is so powerful,
Okay. So break that one down for us.
where Paul talks about,
Mm-hmm.
my grace is sufficient for you,
Yeah.
for my power is made perfect in weakness. This one always gets me.
Yeah.
Because it's basically saying, all those things
Yeah.
that you think disqualify you,
Yeah.
all those imperfections, those
Mhm.
struggles, those are actually the places
Yeah.
where God's grace
Mm-hmm.
can really shine through.
So it's almost like
Yes.
those weaknesses, those failings, those are opportunities to experience grace more fully.
Exactly.
I've always struggled with that because I think in my mind,
Yes.
it's like, well, if God's grace is sufficient
Yeah.
and God's power is made perfect in weakness,
Right.
shouldn't I just be strong all the time?
Yeah, why even bother with weakness?
Like, why even go there?
I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this.
Yeah.
Like, we live in a culture that's all about,
Strength,
yes.
self-reliance.
Yes, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, you've got to have it all together.
Yes,
and
you can't show weakness.
Right.
But this
Yeah.
is saying that's not where grace thrives.
Yeah, so it's almost like admitting weakness
Mhm.
is the key.
In a way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it, if you're super strong, you don't need help
Right.
lifting something heavy.
Yeah.
But if you admit I can't do this on my own,
Yeah.
suddenly someone else's strength becomes crucial.
And grace is the strength in this instance.
It is.
Okay.
It is the strength that comes in and says, okay, I'm here for you.
Wow. So it's like vulnerability is a strength.
In a way it is. And I think this is actually really interesting because it ties into what we understand about things like resilience and self-acceptance.
Yeah.
These are such buzzwords in our culture right now, but they really are at their core embracing this idea of grace.
Wow. That's really cool. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
And it makes you think about how this ancient idea of grace is so applicable to our modern lives.
Absolutely. And speaking of access,
Yes.
Hebrews 4.16 talks about approaching the throne of grace. Now, I don't know about you, but that image always felt a little intimidating.
I get that.
You know, because thrones are usually symbols of.
Yeah, like you're going before a king.
Right.
You're going before someone who has power.
Authority.
And it can feel like you're being judged.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you add grace to the mix, it changes the whole picture.
Okay. Yeah.
It's no longer about like groveling before a harsh ruler.
Yeah.
It's about coming to a loving parent who wants to comfort you, who wants to help you.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not as scary as it sounds.
It's not. It's actually an invitation to come and receive.
It's like the difference between like begging for scraps and being invited to a feast.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that brings us to another big concept. This idea of freedom from sin.
Yeah.
Through grace.
Yeah.
So what does that actually mean, like in real life?
So Romans 6.14 is super key for this. Okay. Talks about no longer being under the law, but under grace. And this was radical in the early church because for centuries, people had lived under a very strict set of rules. And grace offered this totally different way of relating to God.
Yeah. So instead of being motivated by fear, you're motivated by love.
Exactly. And that changes everything.
So it's not that the rules don't matter anymore.
Right.
It's that our motivation for following them is completely different.
Yeah. You're choosing good.
Yeah.
Not because you're afraid of getting in trouble, but because you're aligning yourself with love.
With a loving God.
Exactly.
Okay. And I think that
And that impacts everything. How we view ourselves, how we treat others, how we approach morality.
Yeah.
Even.
That's huge.
It is.
Yeah, so it's almost like we're going to, from this like very rigid rule-based system to this more flexible relationship-based system.
Absolutely.
And that makes me think about another aspect of grace, this idea of growth.
Yes.
So it's not like a one-time deal.
Right.
You know, you're not like...
It's not a finish line.
Right. You're not giving grace and then...
Yeah, you don't get your grace diploma and you're done.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And 2 Peter 3.18 specifically says, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
So good.
But what does that actually look like?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Yeah, like is it like leveling up in a video game?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And in a way, it kind of is.
Okay.
Right? Like you are progressing, but it's less about like getting points.
Yeah.
And more about becoming more fully who you were created to be.
Okay.
Right? Like shedding old patterns, embracing new ways of thinking and being and acting.
Yeah.
And all of that fueled by grace.
So it's not just about like knowing the right answers or doing the right things. It's about those things.
It's about the transformation that happens on the inside.
Yeah.
And that's a process, not an event.
And it's a lifelong process.
Absolutely. And it's not always easy.
No.
Right?
No.
Life throws curveballs.
Yeah, we mess up.
We get knocked down.
We make mistakes.
We experience pain.
Yeah.
But even in those moments, grace is there to pick us up, dust us off, and help us keep going.
And that's where 1 Peter 5.0 comes in.
Yes.
Talking about God restoring.
Yes.
And strengthening us after hardship.
Such a good verse.
Yeah, it's such a comforting verse.
Yeah.
Especially when you're going through a really hard time.
It's a reminder that we're never too far gone for grace to reach.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you're going through. God's love and support are always available.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a powerful source of hope
in
a world that often feels very broken.
Speaking of abundance.
Yes.
One of the things that always struck me about grace is how limitless it is.
It is.
And 2 Corinthians 9:8 talks about God making grace abound to us.
Yes.
So that we can abound in good works.
It's like this overflowing, never-ending supply.
It's not a limited time offer.
No.
It's not,
It's not like, well, supplies last.
Yeah, get your grace while you can.
Yeah.
It's there all the time.
It makes me think of like a waterfall.
Yeah.
Just constantly pouring out.
That's a great image.
And we can step under it.
Yes.
Anytime.
Doesn't matter how dirty you feel.
Yeah, no matter how unworthy we might feel.
Exactly.
And
because it's so abundant, it frees us to be generous with it.
Yes.
We don't have to hoard it.
Yeah.
For ourselves.
Yeah.
We can extend that same grace to others.
Yeah. And that brings us to our final verse. James 4:6.
Yeah.
Talks about humility being the key
Yes.
to receiving more grace.
It puts it pretty bluntly. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
And that's tough because I think we live in a culture that celebrates pride and celebrates
reliance.
Yeah, being self-made.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to be the best.
Yeah, you got
to be number one.
Yeah, you've got to hustle. You got to grind.
Yeah, no one's going to hand it to you.
Yeah, you got to go out there and get it.
Yep.
But this verse is saying that actually is an obstacle.
Yeah, our ego can actually get in the way of experiencing grace.
Yeah.
Because pride makes us think, we don't need help. We've got it all figured out.
We're good on our own.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah. Humility, on the other hand, opens us up to receive.
Yeah.
It allows us to acknowledge our limitations, our need for something greater than ourselves.
So it's saying that admitting that we don't have it all together is actually the most powerful thing we can do.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but it's true.
Yeah.
Humility unlocks the door to grace. And when we walk through that door, our whole perspective shifts.
Wow.
We start to see ourselves, others, and the world with more compassion, more understanding, more love.
Yeah. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From grace as the foundation of salvation to its empowering presence in our daily lives, to its boundless nature and the importance of humility.
Yes.
I think we can clearly see that grace is...
It's not just a nice religious word.
Yeah.
It's a force that can radically transform our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, here's something I want you to think about.
All right.
Knowing what we've discussed today, how might an awareness of grace change your perspective on your own life, your relationships, and even the world around you?
Good question.
What would it look like
to
live each day with that waterfall of grace constantly showering over you?
Yes.
Constantly showering over you.
That's something to ponder.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
That was good.
That was fun. Yeah, I like talking about grace.
Yeah, me too.
It's always encouraging.
Yeah. It's hopeful.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time.